Welcome to our deep dive into Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs. We're going to go beyond the typical visionary genius's narrative and explore his human side.
What I find fascinating is that Jobs actively participated in this biography,
Oh, yeah.
knowing full well that Isaacson wouldn't shy away from the less flattering parts of his life.
Yeah.
He even gave Isaacson access to family, friends, and even rivals.
Wow. Okay, so let's unpack this. What were some of the early influences that shaped Steve Jobs?
Well, Jobs was adopted,
Right.
and his parents, Paul and Clara, instilled values like hard work and craftsmanship.
Makes sense.
They even had a deep appreciation for design. They were really into those Eichler homes, the ones with the floor-to-ceiling glass.
I can see the connection. A well-designed home shaping a future design icon. But isn't that a bit of a leap? Like to say those houses had a major impact on his work at Apple.
Well, Jobs himself talked about how those houses represented a certain simplicity and honesty in design.
Hmm.
It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about functionality and a connection to the surrounding environment.
Hmm.
You can see echoes of that in Apple products.
Interesting. So it wasn't just about good looks. It was deeper than that. What about his tinkering side? Where did that come from?
His father, Paul, was a mechanic and would often take young Steve to junkyards.
Hold on, taking a kid to a junkyard, that's not your typical father-son outing.
Yeah, it's not exactly a trip to Disneyland.
Right. So was this Paul encouraging Steve's technical curiosity? Or just a cheap way to keep him busy?
Probably a bit of both. But those trips definitely played a role in shaping Jobs' hands-on approach to technology.
Makes sense.
He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty and figure things out for himself.
I like that. And this brings us to a story that I think perfectly captures Jobs' audacity. Okay, let's hear it.
When Jobs was 12, he needed parts for a frequency counter he was building.
Okay.
So he did what any 12-year-old would do, looked up Bill Hewlett's number in the phone book, and called him.
Wait, he cold called Bill Hewlett, the founder of HP, at 12. That's either incredibly gutsy or completely clueless.
It was gutsy, for sure. Not only did Hewlett take the call,
No.
he chatted with Jobs about electronics and even offered him a summer job at HP.
That's incredible. So that early experience with HP must have really solidified his path towards technology.
Absolutely. It showed him that even as a young kid, he could make things happen if he was bold enough to just reach out and ask.
So we've got design influences from his parents, hands-on learning in junkyards, and the audacity to call up Bill Hewlett. What else shaped his early years?
Well, Jobs was also exposed to the counterculture and developed a deep interest in Zen Buddhism.
Right.
This had a profound impact on his worldview and his design philosophy.
So that's where the whole simplicity is the ultimate sophistication mantra comes from.
Exactly. Zen Buddhism emphasizes mindfulness, simplicity, and a focus on the essential. And those principles are evident in Apple's design aesthetic.
Yeah.
The clean lines, the intuitive interfaces, the focus on user experience.
It seems like all those early influences, the design, the tinkering, the counterculture, they all converged to shape his approach to technology. But there's this one aspect of Jobs that everyone always talks about, the reality distortion field.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The legendary reality distortion field. It was coined by Bud Tribble, one of the original Mac team members.
What exactly is it? It sounds more like science fiction than a real phenomenon.
It's a term used to describe Jobs' uncanny ability to bend reality to his will. Like he had this almost supernatural power to convince people that the impossible was possible.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, during the development of the Macintosh, Jobs bet John Couch that the Mac would ship before the Lisa,
Really?
even though everyone, including Jobs, knew that the Lisa was much further along in development.
So he was basically betting on a miracle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that was the thing about Jobs. He had this unwavering belief in his own vision,
Right.
and he could somehow transfer that belief to others.
I can see how that would be powerful. But didn't that also create a lot of pressure and stress for the people working with him?
Absolutely. The reality distortion field could be incredibly empowering. It pushed people to achieve incredible things, but could also be incredibly frustrating and even harmful.
How so?
Well, Jobs had a habit of setting unrealistic deadlines and demanding the impossible from his team. He would often ignore technical limitations and push people to their breaking point.
So it wasn't just about positive thinking, it was about ignoring reality and forcing others to conform to his vision.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And it led to some spectacular successes.
Of course.
But it also created a lot of burnout and resentment.
So the reality distortion field was a double-edged sword. It fueled Apple's innovation, but at a cost. So how did this play out in the creation of some of Apple's most iconic products?
We'll take the 1984 Super Bowl ad, a defining moment for Apple,
Right.
and a prime example of Jobs' reality distortion field in action.
The one with the woman throwing a hammer at the big screen?
That's the one.
I remember that ad. It was visually stunning, but kind of strange for a computer commercial.
Exactly. The board of directors hated it.
Oh, yeah.
They thought it was too dark, too dystopian,
Yeah.
way too risky.
But Jobs loved it.
He was completely convinced it would be a game changer,
Huh.
poured his heart and soul into it, even threatened to pull Apple's funding if they didn't air it.
Wow. And it worked brilliantly. I mean, the ad became a cultural phenomenon, instantly making the Macintosh a symbol of rebellion and innovation.
It's a perfect example of how Jobs' unwavering belief, his reality distortion field, could turn a risky gamble into a massive win.
So he wasn't afraid to go against the grain and fight for his vision, even when everyone else thought he was crazy.
He definitely wasn't afraid to take risks.
But let's move on to another aspect of Jobs that's almost legendary, his obsession with design.
Jobs had this belief that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Right.
He was obsessed with making things clean, intuitive, and aesthetically pleasing.
That definitely comes across in Apple products. But was it always a positive thing, this obsession? I mean,
It's a complex issue.
mm,
On one hand, his relentless pursuit of perfection led to some of the most beautiful and user-friendly products ever created. But on the other hand, it could also be a source of frustration for the people working with him.
you mean those stories about him demanding multiple iterations of a design, even for something as minor as the title bar on our window?
Exactly. He would drive his design team crazy with his attention to detail. Nothing was ever quite good enough.
Hmm.
He once redesigned the iPhone case at the last minute because it felt too masculine.
Wow. So this wasn't just about creating beautiful products. It was about control.
There was definitely an element of control there.
Hmm.
But I think it went deeper than that. Jobs saw design as an integral part of the user experience.
Okay.
He believed that a well-designed product was not just aesthetically pleasing, but also more functional and intuitive.
So it wasn't just about looks. It was about how the product felt, how it interacted with the user.
Precisely. He wanted people to have an emotional connection with Apple products. He wanted them to feel a sense of joy and delight when they used them.
I'm starting to understand the depth of his design philosophy, but it must have been exhausting to work with someone who was so demanding.
Oh, absolutely. There's a famous story about Chris Espinosa, one of the original Mac team members who designed a calculator for the computer.
Oh, I've heard this one. Jobs had a critique for every single version Espinosa created.
Yeah.
The colors, the lines, the button size, nothing was ever right.
Exactly. Espinosa finally got so frustrated that he created a blank screen with a note that said, "This is the calculator Steve wants. Please draw what you want, and we'll try to implement it."
That's brilliant. What was Jobs' reaction?
He loved it. He finally realized that his obsession with control was sometimes counterproductive.
Huh.
It's a telling anecdote because it shows that even Jobs, with his legendary reality distortion field, could be brought back down to earth.
So he was capable of learning and adapting. That's a relief to hear. But let's move on from the products and talk about the man himself, Steve Jobs, the human being. He had this reputation for being difficult to work with, but what about his personal relationships?
Jobs was a complex individual, to say the least.
Right.
His personal life was just as tumultuous as his professional life.
Well, his relationship with his daughter Lisa was famously complicated. He initially denied paternity and only acknowledged her years later.
It was a painful chapter in his life,
Yeah.
and one that he deeply regretted later on. They did eventually reconcile, and Lisa even lived with Jobs for a time.
Huh.
But their relationship remained complex.
And this strained relationship even inspired a novel, right?
Yes, Mona Simpson, Jobs' biological sister, wrote a fictionalized account of their family story in her novel, A Regular Guy.
Oh, wow.
It offers a glimpse into the complexities of their family dynamics and the emotional turmoil caused by Jobs' early actions.
So despite his success and brilliance, he was clearly capable of making serious mistakes and hurting those closest to him. But he also had these incredibly strong bonds with some of his colleagues, didn't he?
Absolutely. His relationship with Joni Ive, Apple's chief design officer, was incredibly close.
Yeah.
They shared a deep passion for design, and they would spend hours together brainstorming ideas and obsessing over the smallest details.
They seemed more like friends than colleagues.
Their families were close as well, and it's clear that Jobs valued Ive's opinion immensely. Their partnership was truly unique and played a crucial role in Apple's success.
Speaking of iconic partnerships, we can't forget about Jobs' rivalry with Bill Gates, a classic clash of titans in the tech world.
Their relationship was complex
Right.
and evolved over the years, from early admiration and collaboration
Hmm,
to intense rivalry,
I can imagine.
and later a grudging respect.
Didn't Jobs actually visit Microsoft early on to try and convince them to develop software for the Macintosh?
Yes, he even painted this grand vision of a computer for the masses,
Yeah.
a vision that actually captivated the Microsoft team. They even codenamed the project SAND, which stood for Steve's amazing new device.
That's amazing. But as the Macintosh and Windows became competitors, their relationship soured, right?
Absolutely. Jobs accused Gates of stealing Apple's ideas and lacking creativity.
Oh, wow.
It was a bitter rivalry, fueled by their clashing personalities
Right.
and their ambition to dominate the tech industry.
But despite their differences, they eventually developed a mutual respect, didn't they?
Yes, in their later years, they had a few friendly encounters. It's a testament to their maturity and their ability to recognize each other's strengths, even amidst their fierce competition.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, it's clear that Steve Jobs was a man of contradictions.
Definitely.
Brilliant and demanding, visionary and volatile. His intensity fueled his success, but it also created challenges in his personal and professional life.
And as we move into the final part,
Right.
we'll explore his legacy,
Okay.
the impact he had on the world,
Yes.
and the more challenging aspects of his personality that can't be ignored.
Join us next time as we continue to unravel the enigma of Steve Jobs, the man behind the myth. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring the many layers of Steve Jobs, the visionary, the innovator, the demanding perfectionist.
And in this final part, we're going to focus on a pivotal chapter in his story, his return to Apple in 1997.
Oh, right after being ousted a decade earlier.
Yeah, talk about a comeback story.
It's almost Shakespearean, the exiled leader returning to save his kingdom.
It really is an incredible turnaround. Jobs had founded NXT, a computer company
Right.
that, while technologically advanced, never really gained mainstream success.
But it did catch the eye of Apple,
It did.
which was kind of floundering at the time.
Exactly. Apple was losing market share. Their
Hmm.
products fell stale, and they desperately needed a jolt of innovation.
So they acquired NXT, bringing Jobs back into the fold,
Initially, he came in as an advisor,
right?
but within a year, he was back in control as interim CEO.
Wow, that's a stunning move, considering he'd been forced out just a few years prior.
It really is. But Jobs wasn't back for revenge.
No.
He was on a mission to save Apple, the company he had poured his heart and soul into.
And he had a clear vision for how to do it.
He did. He started by slashing the product line, which had become bloated and confusing.
There's that famous story about him drawing a 2x2 grid on a whiteboard
Yeah.
with consumer and pro on one axis and desktop and portable on the other.
Exactly. He declared that Apple would focus on just 4 core products, one for each quadrant of the grid.
That's a bold move. A simplification that many saw as risky.
It was. But it was also a stroke of genius. By focusing on a few key products, Apple could streamline its development process,
Right.
improve quality, and create a clearer message for consumers.
Okay, and then there was the design. Jobs understood that design wasn't just about aesthetics.
Right.
It was about creating an emotional connection with the user,
He brought back Jony Ive.
who was already at Apple.
Yeah, but hadn't really had the chance to truly shine yet.
And together, Jobs and Ive created a design language that was both beautiful and functional.
It really resonated with consumers on a deep level.
Like the iMac, released in 1998.
Oh, yeah.
It was colorful, translucent, and playful.
Such a radical departure from the beige boxes that dominated the PC market at the time.
It was a massive hit, not just for its design, but for its ease of use.
Exactly. Jobs and Ive had created a computer that was both powerful and accessible.
Right.
A machine that anyone could use and enjoy.
And then there was that Think Different ad campaign.
Oh, yeah, one of my favorites.
It wasn't just about selling computers. It was about selling a mindset, way of thinking.
It celebrated the rebels,
Yeah.
the misfits, the ones who challenged the status quo.
Yeah, a message that resonated deeply with Apple's core audience.
Jobs understood the power of branding,
Rep.
of creating an aspirational image that went beyond the product itself.
He wanted Apple to be more than just a computer company.
He did. He wanted to be a cultural force,
Yeah.
a symbol of creativity and innovation.
And he achieved that, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Under Jobs' leadership, Apple went from near bankruptcy to one of the most valuable and influential companies in the world.
But it wasn't just about the products and the branding. It was also about Jobs' leadership style.
Right.
His obsessive attention to detail, his relentless drive for perfection.
He was notoriously secretive about Apple's product development,
Really?
keeping everything under wraps until the very last minute.
He understood the power of anticipation,
He did.
building excitement and buzz around a product launch.
Those product launches became legendary, with Jobs himself taking the stage to unveil the latest Apple creation,
Hmm.
often with a dramatic flourish.
He was a master showman,
Definitely.
a storyteller who could captivate an audience and make them believe in the magic of Apple.
It worked. Those product launches generated headlines around the world, solidifying Apple's image as a leader in innovation and design.
So what can we learn from Steve Jobs' legacy? What are the key takeaways from this whole deep dive?
I think one of the biggest lessons is the importance of having a clear vision, a North Star that guides everything you do. Jobs had this unwavering belief in the power of technology to change the world,
Right.
and he never strayed from that vision.
He also taught us the importance of design,
Yeah.
not just as a superficial element, but
Uh-huh.
as a core part of the user experience.
Absolutely. And he showed us the power of passion, pouring your heart and soul into your work. Jobs was intensely passionate about everything he did,
Yeah.
and that passion was contagious.
He wasn't afraid to take risks, to challenge the status quo, and to push the boundaries of what was possible.
But he also understood the importance of execution, sweating the details and making sure that every product lived up to Apple's high standards.
Jobs was a complex and flawed individual,
He was.
but there's no denying his impact on the world. He left behind a legacy of innovation, creativity, and design that continues to inspire us today.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, it's worth pondering one final question. What would the world look like today if Steve Jobs had never existed?
That's a great question. It's a question we can only speculate on, but one thing is for sure. The world would be a very different place
It would.
without the products, the ideas, and the inspiration that Steve Jobs brought to it.
He was a true original, a one-of-a-kind visionary who changed the course of technology and left an indelible mark on our culture.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey into the life and legacy of Steve Jobs.
It's been a pleasure,
We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of this complex and fascinating figure.
and we encourage you to continue exploring his story and his impact on the world. Because as Jobs himself said, the only way to do great work is to love what you do.